Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Cofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Empowering Research with GenAI and Agentic AI, from synthesis and understanding to insights and innovation, which is sponsored by Elsevier. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. I'll just put a couple links in the chat to register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Also, if you're interested in library technology, LibTech Insights, or LTI, is a content vertical from Choice that examines the day-to-day impacts of library and education technology on academic librarians, researchers, and students. You can find out more about LTI via the links in the chat. We send out an email once a week with our latest posts and some handpicked tech news stories, usually in the realm of AI. Okay, now before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to submit any questions or comments for our speakers. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you'd like or would like to be addressed. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the Show Captions button on the bottom panel of your screen. You can also turn on automated translation for the captions by toggling on Translation and selecting your preferred language. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version, handouts from Elsevier, and where to access today's slides. Okay, and with that, we are ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Emily.
Great. Thanks so much, Sabrina. And hello, everyone. It's so great to be here with all of you for this Choice webinar. I'm Emily Singley, and I work in library relations at Elsevier. And I'm going to be hosting our webinar today. And next slide, please. I'm here with two of my colleagues from our talented product development teams. We have Adrian Raudaschl, who is our principal product manager for Scopus AI. And we also have Judson Dunham, who is our senior director of product management for ScienceDirect and Mendeley. And Judd and Adrian are going to be sharing a little bit about how Elsevier is approaching generative AI and agentic AI today. Next slide, please. And before we get started, I just want to give a shout out for our next Choice webinar, which is coming up in September, also on generative AI. This webinar is going to feature two librarians talking about how they are using generative AI tools and what they're seeing with their users. We've got David Leffler, who is the Discovery and Access Librarian from Liberty University, and also Jamie Quinn, the Associate Librarian in Nursing from Baylor University. So I think that's going to be really interesting, and recommend you mark your calendars for that one as well if you think it might be useful. Next slide, please. Here's what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to start out with a short overview of our AI approach at Elsevier, and then I'm going to hand it off to Judd for a deeper dive into ScienceDirect AI and Mendeley. And then Adrian's going to take a look at Scopus AI and the new deep research capabilities there. And of course, we always try and leave plenty of time for Q&A, as Sabrina mentioned. So please do keep those questions coming. They're always wonderful. And next slide, please. So at Elsevier, we've always been about enabling our users to do their best work. And, you know, with the AI kind of revolution we're seeing, there's no exception to that here. This is how we have been thinking about AI. We don't want to build AI just because it's there. It's not AI for the sake of AI, right? Our approach is to build purpose-built tools that meet the real needs of researchers, of our users. And so that's why we're really working closely with our users and listening to them and watching how they work, testing with them, and making sure they're very actively involved in how we're developing these products, and that it's really helping them deliver those insights that they're looking to deliver. So next slide, please. And I always like to point out that at Elsevier, AI and machine learning technologies are not new to us. We've been using these technologies very widely in our tools and platforms for over 15 years. And now that we're continuing to develop generative AI technologies, we're using this same approach, collaborating closely with our users and making sure that our solutions are really grounded in trusted content, adhering to those responsible AI principles that we have, prioritizing data privacy, and supporting industry standards. Next slide, please. And so what exactly do I mean by grounded in trusted content? And I think it's important to understand that unlike more generic commercial tools, Scopus AI and ScienceDirect AI aren't using their training data. They're not querying their training data to answer research questions. The best way to think about ScienceDirect AI and Scopus AI is that they're purpose-built AI tools that sit on top of the Scopus and ScienceDirect databases, two of the most trusted academic platforms already in use by library users. So the data that's being searched and accessed is the Scopus and ScienceDirect databases, content that's peer-reviewed, vetted, and verifiable. We're not getting answers from Reddit and the World Wide Web and, all these other places. This integrated approach means that we've been able to custom develop the technology and optimize the platform's functionality and the content that users are accessing. This not only improves the relevancy of responses, it helps to minimize bias and greatly minimizes hallucinations as well. And also, we've been able to, with this purpose-built approach, we've been able to bake in the transparency that's so important to ensure that our users are accessing valid and true information. So while some free Gen AI tools make it nearly impossible to track down the sources of their claims, our tools show their work and link out to references so you can readily decipher how answers have been reached and evaluate them for relevancy and accuracy. Next slide, please. And lastly, I always like to share our responsible AI principles that underpin all of our AI work. These 5 principles around how we consider real-world impacts, prevent bias, ensure transparency, have human oversight, and respect data privacy aren't just words on a page for us. I've seen how our development teams are enacting these principles in all the work that they do, and I think you'll also hear about this from both Judd and Adrian as they talk a bit more about their work. And with that, I know you're all eager to see what we've been up to with both ScienceDirect and Scopus, so I will hand it over to Judd first to dive into ScienceDirect.
Thanks a lot, Emily, and thanks to everyone who's in attendance today, and thanks to our friends at ACRL. This is my, I'm not sure how many times I've been in front of ACRL, but I know that I was here about a year ago right now to speak at a very similar webinar about what we were building with ScienceDirect. And as I was reflecting on what all's taken place since then, it's a tremendous amount of progress that we've made, not just within ScienceDirect, but also in advancing our vision for more of a unified platform for research that covers as much of the ground as possible to meet researchers' needs. So I'm very excited to talk to you about what we've been up to since then. So to recap, I think when I was here a year ago, we weren't even sure that we were going to have a product that would be called ScienceDirect AI. We were really just experimenting, really just trying to learn about how we could make use of this tremendous asset of more than 10 million full text documents and book chapters in order to do generative AI assisted research over it. And I'm happy to say that if you weren't aware, we do have a product now in the market called ScienceDirect AI. We're very proud of it. We've really put what we believe is a platform approach to sort of blend discovery and reading using generative AI to help researchers find and extract insights. And that sits alongside two other great products that we have. Obviously, Scopus AI, which I think you heard about even a year prior to last year, which has had a ton of tremendous development, and Adrian will talk a lot about that. And I'm also very excited to say that we've essentially packaged this year Mendeley AI together with ScienceDirect AI as a way of providing a broad-based generative AI experience using full text, both full text that we can provide from within ScienceDirect and also a kind of a bring your own data approach with Mendeley that incorporates most of the same capabilities that you can find in ScienceDirect. So I think from here, I'm going to take over the screen and share, basically just do a little show and tell update of what we've been up to. So give me just a moment to bring up my screen. Okay, if you cannot see my browser window, please do someone shout. So if you were here last year, if you've seen anything that I've been doing since then, or other people from Elsevier demoing ScienceDirect AI, this should look somewhat familiar to you. But I want to call out one very important addition here, which is that we've incorporated the ability to include Scopus abstracts in your discovery experience from within Ask ScienceDirect AI. It's a line that I deploy a lot in settings like this, that no one ever walked into the library and asked for the Elsevier stack. We know this, we hear you. And during our beta last year, which ran for more than 6 months with 70 institutions around the world, the number one thing we were hearing from people is, this is great stuff, but it's too bad it only includes Elsevier. So if we have now included the ability, if you are a Scopus customer and you subscribe to Scopus AI, you can one-click toggle on to include Scopus abstracts in your discovery experience within Ask ScienceDirect AI. If you have forgotten what ScienceDirect AI is, essentially behind the scenes here is a large and growing corpus. I think last year it probably would have been in the range of 3 to 5 million full text articles. It's since grown to almost 15 million full text articles, 12 million Elsevier journal articles, and combined with content from our society partners, a little over 1 million book chapters, as well as 2 million open access CC BY licensed articles from that we've aggregated for use in this product. And we enable you to, as a researcher, to run natural language-based full text queries over that corpus. And what we see here, and I put this query in by design, we see that people, as they get used to this type of experience, have come to figure out how to use it correctly. We had a lot of people early on using just keyword search, not really knowing what to do, but we find that a lot of people now are using words like compare or compare the experimental methods used. So you can see that this is a much more useful way of interrogating the content through a combination of keywords as well as prompts and kind of commands to generate outputs that meet a user's need in more exciting ways. So you can see another thing that we've built in the intervening months is a functionality that fronts the user query to actually take it apart and maybe convert it into both natural language search as well as keyword search in an attempt to find and make sure that we retrieve the most relevant information to respond to the query. And we are still, as you can see, generating response based on now the combination of both abstracts and full text coming back from ScienceDirect and Scopus. And so within here, we've made a lot of updates in the intervening months, a lot of innovation on the retrieval side of things that you can't see here, but we've managed to increase the relevance and utility of these queries as measured by user feedback quite a bit. And you can see that we've also added the ability to add documents to a Mendeley library. And that's where I'm going to switch to now. I'm going to show you some of the integrations that we've made, as I mentioned, to make this more of a platform experience. So within Mendeley, or within ScienceDirect, I can now access my Mendeley library directly in this way. And I can go and view the PDFs in my Mendeley library directly from within ScienceDirect. And that in itself is not the most exciting thing in the world, but I'm going to use this as a way to lead into how we've brought some of the functionality in ScienceDirect into Mendeley directly. And first, I'm going to show you the reading assistant. So the reading assistant is something that we built in ScienceDirect that essentially lets you have a sort of a chat session Q&A with the article. And so this is one of the most popular features in ScienceDirect AI. People reported during our beta that this functionality, just simply letting them use a large language model to safely and responsibly interact with a PDF in a conversational way, was saving people upwards of 2 to 3 hours a week of their time for reading and discovery. So within this chat with the article functionality, you can see that we hold to our responsible AI principles. We aren't making things up. We aren't turning the researcher over to the large language model and having them answer it with its own information. We are always basing all responses that we generate in our AI products on citable full text. In ScienceDirect AI, that means we're searching across the whole corpus and pulling back snippets of content from within the full text and generating assertions based on those snippets, and you can always view the reference. And in the reading assistant, that same experience translates with being able to go and actually navigate to the piece of text from within the article that assertion is taken from. And so within Mendeley, they've essentially replicated the same functionality we have on ScienceDirect, but now you can use that on any of the content that you have in your Mendeley library that you're either discovering through ScienceDirect or you're uploading yourself. And I'm going to switch over to Mendeley and show you one last thing before I turn it over to Adrian. So the other feature that we built in ScienceDirect AI that users really have been excited about is something that we call compare experiments. And what compare experiments does, if you haven't seen me or describe the product before, is it essentially will take up to 10 articles and it will go through them iteratively, again, using large language models, not so much for not for making up stuff or generating assertions, but in this case, using the large language model for its ability to read through massive amounts of text and extract information in a highly specific way according to your very specific needs. So very early on when we were building ScienceDirect AI, we heard from many users that one thing that they would really like to have out of this is, apart from the bespoke summary in response to their query, is the next step is to actually go into a research article and dive into the details and see what was actually done. What sort of experiments were run? What were the goals of those experiments? How were they carried out? And what were the specific results? So in this case, again, just like in ScienceDirect, where we send articles from our own corpus off to large language models to generate these types of responses, we've brought the same capability to Mendeley, where if you're a subscriber to ScienceDirect AI, and you're a Mendeley user, you can carry out all the same functionality from within your Mendeley library on the documents that you bring yourself. So we've had a great response to this from our Mendeley user community. It's been out in various forms of alpha and beta now for several months. And we see that people really appreciate this kind of analysis and reading functionality brought into the place where they're doing their deep research into their own collected libraries as part of their research projects. So I'll end it there and turn it over to Adrian, but I'll leave you with one final comment, which is that this is really indicative of our goal within Elsevier to not build many different AI solutions. We've done a lot of that over the past year as we experiment out and find out what people like, but we're really now moving to the next phase of trying to bring these things together and create that more integrated experience. And with that, I will hand it over to Adrian.
Thank you very much, Judd. Maybe I need to return to the slides. Fantastic. Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Raudaschl. I'm, as mentioned, I'm the product manager of Scopus AI. And as you saw with Judd, some exciting things happening with AI in the ScienceDirect space. And we want to build on that theme by also showing you a little bit about what's happening in the Scopus world, and also where we think, maybe some sneak peeks of where we think this stuff is going. So I think the best way to think about it is that, and the thing we really want to showcase to you is a new tool we'll bring out the Scopus, hopefully this week. That's been in the works for just about a year now. And I'm sure you've heard of similar equivalents in other products, known as our deep research mode. So I think maybe the best way to talk about this feature is to demonstrate it. But at a very high level, we've been seeing some patterns, speaking to researchers in the community and seeing people using AI tools over the last 6 months or so. And with the evolution of these AI tooling, we can see more ways, as mentioned at the beginning, that we can build solutions that really enable researchers to do their best work and be more impactful, which is exactly where we want to be focusing our efforts with these AI tools. And to best demonstrate this, I'm going to start a quick demo. And I promise I won't go into Scopus AI in too much detail, but I think that it's worth showing because it will help illustrate the difference a little bit. So right now I'm in the Scopus AI environment, and I'm putting this question here. Which existing anti-inflammatory drugs could be repurposed for slowing the progression of Parkinson's disease, and what experimental protocols would validate this approach? This is a very complex question. It's multifaceted, it's got many parts to it, and probably also got quite a few unknowns. Now, our tools today are very transactional. We put in a question, it does some searches, like it is here doing a natural language search and a keyword search, for example, as you saw similarly with ScienceDirect AI, and combining those things together to try and produce a citation-based or evidence-based response, in this case, supported by the trusted Scopus corpus. But as you'll probably notice here, it's still not maybe as detailed as we would like this to be. Sure, it's giving us some overviews of maybe tetracyclines, and I don't know how many people might be familiar with these terms, or non-steroidals, experimental protocols, but it's still quite high level. And yes, you can, with Scopus AI, for example, maybe do things like a concept map to maybe help illustrate some of those ideas together a little bit better, maybe click on them to get a little bit more detail. Or I could maybe say things like, well, tell me more about that in this context. And so I will go in and do a follow-up question. But what we've heard is that the needs of researchers and users of Scopus AI are evolving. They're not looking just for things that can help them get to speed with information, which is very important, or help them explore a new idea, also important. But they would like to get into questions that are much more complex, things that may not have direct answers, things that take in a variety of different sources from different areas to put together something more comprehensive that enables them to think around the problem. And so we've been working over the last year or so on a system to do just that, which we are hoping to announce soon, and we call our deep research mode. And to do it, we're going to take that same question I just put before, and I'm going to flip this switch over to deep research and let that run. And this is going to take a little while, but let me explain a bit about what's happening behind the scenes. Now, rather than what we do today, which is we take a question like this, we improve the query, we might break it down and pick some tools. In this approach, we want to be able to explore this entire academic space from a couple of different perspectives, and then being able to go out there and explore those in more detail for a few more iterations, and then reflect on the responses, and then create some more searches to explore it further. You got to think of it a bit of like when you look at a research area. When you look at something you don't know, you're probably going to ask a couple of questions, you'll reflect on the information, you'll go out there, you'll probably do some more detailed research on those different areas, and you'll come back, reflect a bit more, and do more searches. And what we've done is we've been speaking to the academic community to understand the processes that researchers go through to try and build their knowledge of a given area to answer these type of questions. And we try to distill it into this system. And what you're seeing here is the AI effectively in its thinking process, going through and thinking about, well, I'm going to make a research plan, and I'm going to explore 4 key research areas around this area. And then I'm going to start exploring each of those independently, and then look at the results we find, and then go out and do some more searches. And depending on the complexity of these questions, this can last from anywhere from a couple of minutes to maybe about 5 minutes or so. Now, well, I'm not going to make you wait all that time to get a response, but just to illustrate that a little bit better, this is kind of what's happening in the background. A question comes in like this one. We'll break it down to a few different topic areas. Like in this case, we want to explore maybe anti-inflammatory drugs that are being applied, experimental models, the mechanism of action, the assessment of long-term outcomes, and the gaps and limitations. Based on that, we'll pick the most appropriate tools to use to solve that problem, and then we'll aggregate those and trying to find some key learnings or understandings from that. And then we'll take those items and we'll take it through another step where we try to sort of apply a meta-analysis, see if there are uncommon connections between these different ideas or things that people may have not necessarily put together before, which could be interesting. This is illustrating quite clearly what is going on in the deep research problem. It's not about taking a question, trying to find a direct answer. It's trying to work from first principles to build up an answer from the core information. If you want to answer a question about how you repurpose a drug, for example, you can't ask a question because it's very likely that literature may not exist. What you want to do is you want to understand, for example, how the drug works, where it's been applied in other places, how does the anti-inflammatory mechanisms of certain parts of the brain work, for example. What kind of clinical trials have been run in this area which might be related? And then aggregate that information to come up with a far more comprehensive answer. We think this is an approach that we're not seeing really out there in the rest of the academic space right now, or even with the common tools doing deep research. And we believe it leads to far better responses overall. So as I mentioned, we'll let something like this run for a little while. And what will come back is something that looks a bit like this. Not an academic paper, but a report designed to help you navigate this complex question, as an example. And we've taken a different approach to this as well. So we actually been, as I mentioned, prototyping this for a year or so. And at the start of the year, when we started producing examples to show to people, the response was actually very negative. People really didn't like what we were producing as reports. And one of the reasons why is what we were actually producing was something that looked more like an academic paper or even a systematic review. And researchers really didn't like that for good reason, for a few reasons, I should add. One, actually, we don't really want to do the work of a researcher. That's not our strength area, and it's not our intention. And it also covered our responsible AI principles, which we talked about a bit earlier, which govern how we think about these problems. Now, it's only for the working with the academic community, we realized also it would have other problems, like critical thinking could be impacted. If you can just run a question and get an answer, I mean, especially if you're a junior, and you do that for a little while, maybe you just come to rely on these answers and do less of that kind of thinking work yourself. That's not something we want to do either, because if we want to help researchers be more impactful and we want to help stimulate them with creativity, we have to help find ways to let them navigate this information, or at least think through this information in a way that really helps them. And that's what we've done with this report here. We've styled it completely differently based on that feedback. I'm going to walk you through it very briefly. So first of all, we produced something like this, a key findings table. This is a high-level overview of what we found here from about 100 different references we've selected to write this report, with an overview of the main criteria we described in the actual original query. Of course, you can click on these and see the underlying source that it's based on if you need more information. After that, oh, I think my screen is frozen. That's not good. Prototype say. I'll go down this. Well, thankfully, the other one's finished, so we can go through here. After that, we actually go through a direct answer. And that tries to directly answer the question that the user originally asked. Again, the idea here is to help get a sense of, are we in the right ballpark? Is this answering the question before you read further? We then describe the type of studies that were explored in this. In this case, we looked at studies from 2000 to 2025 in neurology, pharmacology, and we've also, these are the type of methodologies we saw in the papers we leveraged. And then we also talk about some assumptions and limitations. AI can be very convincing. So we also asked the AI to reflect on what did it actually think where might have been issues with the information it found, and what assumptions it might have made while interpreting that information, give users and readers a heads up. And we then finish off with a suggested further research area. And this has come back to that meta-analysis step I talked about of other areas that might be interesting to explore that we didn't quite see in the literature. Now, if that was interesting to you, the next step goes and hopefully should explore a little bit about how we went about describing the detail of this. Now, as I mentioned before, we originally wrote this like an academic paper, which wasn't very useful. And we wanted to build something that really would help researchers kind of build up the critical knowledge from first principles. And we wanted to be like an article. I'm sure you've all read papers where maybe you have to read maybe 100 papers of a book before you got to an insight. And sometimes you come across an article and you read almost every single paragraph and it's another aha moment. Our goal is to get to those aha moments, a type of report that as you're reading it, it's stimulating your thinking about the area. And the way we've done that is by structuring it a bit like this. So rather than trying to convince you of an idea, what we do is we explain the core ideas and principles we found and how they link together to arrive potentially at an insight. So for example, here I'm reading about the new inflammation pathways, then the drug repurposing information, then the methodologies that have been employed and what papers support those. And then intermittently, we also try to explain or give a little bit of a paragraph which explains how some of these ideas can be brought together. The goal here is as you're reading for this, it should be stimulating your thinking around the area. And we've actually just had some feedback from some librarians, and what they just told us is one thing they really liked about this is that it's not doing the work for you. I mean, it's not trying to write something you would then submit as a paper. You still need to think through the information to arrive at conclusions or to be able to produce an artifact from your work. But this has reduced the time significantly of putting together a lot of ideas you may have not even thought about to arrive there, which is exactly our goal. And of course, at the end of that, we can see all 70 references that would have made up this given report. You can give us some feedback or even export it as a PDF with inline citations if you want to share it with a friend. This is deep research in a nutshell. Of course, you can ask follow questions like any other Scopus AI conversation and return to it from our conversation history as well. And just to illustrate that this is not really a question answering type system, there was a question I received when I was demoing this a little while ago in China. And what they were telling us was, well, prove it that this is not a question answer system. Let's ask a question that doesn't have a direct answer, like this one: how to walk across the English Channel, an impossible problem. And this is exactly the type of questions we love because it really helps illustrate what we mean by first principles thinking. If you ask this question in AI tools today, they'll tell you this is just not possible. But that's not our goal here. Our goal here is to not only tell you, yes, it's physically not possible, but if it was possible, here's some ways you might want to think about it. You probably want to think about the environmental and physical challenges, the psychological endurance requirements, the technological innovations that might support you, the historical or maybe the legal limitations around this idea, and maybe even look at some predictive modeling and navigation safety while you're at it. And although we'll say something like no direct established method for walking across the English Channel exists, that's not going to stop us. We're going to help you think about this problem from first principles about how, if this was possible, you might want to break it down with the supporting evidence you need to explore further. And that, in a nutshell, is the Scopus AI deep research tool. So you can go back to the slides, please, if that's all right. Oh, fantastic. So as you've seen there, what's happening is we're taking that question, we're breaking it down into a few different perspectives. We then allow the AI to go and explore each of those perspectives semi-autonomously, looking at different information, reflecting on it, sometimes even changing its decision or mind about what it might want to explore, and doing that for a few iterations to build up a knowledge base so that I can use that to help write a final report after going through a meta-analysis. We also try to write something that doesn't try to convince you an idea. It's designed to stimulate thinking, enable critical thinking, and works from first principles to help you build up your knowledge on a topic area. This is part of the family of research AI features that we have, as you've seen already a few of, like concept map or question follow-ups. We've also got other ones like emerging themes and foundation documents, which I won't going to go into today, but are very cool in their own right. And we designed this in a way to sort of take advantage of where we think a lot of these AI tools are moving in the future. Specifically, how can agentic AI, or AI that works semi-autonomously, guided by humans, is going to help us solve these more complex, multi-layered questions? And we think it's going to do it for a mixture of, being able to plan for itself, using the right tools with the right filters, like year range or document type, for example, to pull it off, being able to pull together information from different sources and see the links between it, surface new patterns for meta-analysis, being able to write things in a way that doesn't convince, but is designed to stimulate creativity and critical thinking, and encourage, most importantly, exploration. The goal here is that the type of work you'd be doing that would take days or maybe weeks to synthesize from many sources can now be done in a couple of minutes, so that you're running more of these type of searches to build your knowledge up faster. Or even better yet, from our perspective, maybe taking a chance on those ideas that may seem risky or very edge case, but could be very impactful. But it's hard to justify spending the amount of time you need to do to prove that it might be. That's where we want to be able to help. And I think that we're finishing with this quote here, which I resonates very much with us, that the true power of these sort of agentic AI processes lie in its ability to augment the human expertise rather than replace it. We made that mistake early on. We worked with our community and our responsibility principles to course correct early. And that governance is actually employed in every single one of our products we work here at in Elsevier with our AI solutions. And with this goal specifically, we want to free our scientists and researchers to focus on the impactful work, the creative work, the problem-solving work. And that's where we need to be playing. And thanks to our links with the academic community, like this and others, we hope to continue building tools in that problem space. So deep research is coming out soon. I want to say thank you very much for listening. And it's great having this audience here. And yeah, looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian, and thank you, Judd. Two really great demos and some really good information there. I saw some things that I hadn't seen before, so I'm really glad I came today. That was fantastic. I hadn't seen some of those features. So we have plenty of time for our Q&A, and I see we've already got quite a few questions people have submitted. If you have a question, if you're curious about something, you want to know more about anything you've seen, please do put it into the Q&A. And for everyone, please take a look at those questions. I think you should all be able to see them in the Q&A box, which if you don't see Q&A at the bottom of your screen, you may have to click on the ... in Zoom and then you'll see it. But click on that Q&A box, you'll see the questions come up, and then you'll see a little thumbs up icon and you can upvote any of the questions. So what I'm going to be doing as moderator right now is I'm just going to keep refreshing the upvotes, and I will ask the questions to our panelists here in the order that they're upvoted. So if we don't get to something, upvote it, and then maybe we'll get to it. We'll try and get to as many as we can in the time we have. So let's see, the top question right now is, how reproducible are the AI searches, and what fields is it searching? Thanks to Allison for this question. Let's see, who wants to take this? Why don't we start with, how about you, Adrian, and then Judd, you can chime in.
Sure. So right now with AI tools, AI works in the space of determinism and non-determinism, which based on the probability of the models, we can't guarantee that the same type of searches or the same responses will be written each time. We could probably fake it. We could probably cache the response and make sure we serve you the same one each time. But we also want to make sure we have a fresh representation of the data because it gets updated pretty much every minute. Right now, in terms of reproducibility in this is something that we don't offer. It's no AI tool can actually reliably offer this at the moment. But things are changing with the new generation of tools. And we do hope to be able to offer ways that if you run the same query over and over again, it will be more deterministic, that we can get you to much closer to the same approach and the same of writing each time. We configured everything we can internally to try and make as reproducible as possible. But right now, it's non-deterministic at the moment.
Judd, anything to add to that?
The only thing I have to add is that I had to learn about this myself when I took up this job, because I think everybody understands that large language models themselves are not deterministic, but I think might be interesting for the audience to understand that the retrieval mechanisms we use are also themselves non-deterministic, because it's performing a real-time relevance calculation that uses something called I think nearest neighbor, which was something that I did not know at the beginning. So I think these webinars are great places for everybody to learn about this emerging technology, and I thought I would just throw that in there.
Thanks. It's a really good point. Yeah, and I think that's a question we get a lot from audiences, is about reproducibility. And I've been a librarian for a long time, and reproducibility has always been sort of the holy grail, but it's always hard to get to because as you both pointed out, the data is changing all the time. Okay, let's see what our next most upvoted question is. From Zana, we have, what is the environmental impact of Elsevier's AI products? Judd, I'll start with you this time, and then Adrian, if you want to weigh in. I think that's a question we often get as well, and it's a good one. So, Judd.
We do often get it, and I would love at some point to be able to come back with a detailed analysis that we've done. I think part of the reason why we've not done such a detailed analysis is because any analysis we do yesterday is going to be out of date by tomorrow. There's so much going on in this space, both in terms of new product development as well as the design of the products themselves. I can say that one of the benefits of Elsevier developing these products is that we are always trying to build efficiency into all of our processes because we are a business, and the more we limit cost, the better off our business is. And that's something that I don't often say as an Elsevier representative, but in this case, the reason I bring it up is that we take the run costs of these solutions very seriously, both from a financial perspective as well as an environmental perspective. And the way that translates as part of our responsible AI principles is that we are always looking for the most efficient way to do any operation that we are doing using large language models. And a specific way that manifests, for example, is we do a lot of internal benchmarking with different models and versions of models. For example, I'm sure everyone's aware that there's multiple versions of the Claude model. So for the compare experiments feature, just as an example, we ran benchmarks in the early days of that to see would we get better results if we used a more powerful model with a higher cost? And we will not always take the most expensive model or the most powerful model unless it really gives a major benefit. And in that case, we were using a much cheaper and more efficient model, the Haiku model, that was generating responses that were nearly as well rated as the most expensive model. So we build efficiency into the process, and that's how we attempt to control both costs as well as environmental impact.
Adrian, do you have anything to add to that? Great answer.
Not really. I think the efficiency one, it's in our interest to ensure that we have the most efficient models for speed, cost, and energy, and everything else. But we also do keep a close eye on exactly, again, choosing the most appropriate models to solve the problem. There's no point throwing a huge model at a problem that can be solved by a smaller one, for example, as Jed has mentioned. The other thing is that our content partners are also very much committed to trying to ensure there's more efficiency within the models. So we have the new batch of 3D5 models, arguably, I think I've been reading it, are more efficient. But more importantly, the servers that they're hosted on, which our partner Microsoft is a primary partner for that, also have commitments to be carbon neutral by 2030, for example. And I think there's a lot of great initiatives they're doing right now. They also create more transparency around that and trying to improve their environmental footprint, which we directly benefit from and encourage.
Yeah, great point. I was going to add that as well. Both Microsoft and Elsevier have both made commitments to 2030 in terms of zero carbon. And I can give a shout out. I just saw the other day the MIT Tech Review had a good article on Google just released some detailed information about energy use, and it's really startling to see how much it's come down. To Adrian's point of, I think when these models first hit the world, it was sort of staggering amounts of energy, and I think it's come down just exponentially over the past couple of years. So it's been good to see that happen. Something we follow really closely.
Yeah, Should add that, I mean, yeah, the inference hosting part is definitely coming down, but training, yeah, we recognize that's still a problem. Still a huge amount of energy required to train these new things, these new models. But we're hoping from what we're seeing, our partners are also committed to helping there as well. Are those 2030
Yeah.
commitments?
Yep, exactly. Great. Super. All right. Let's see. Refreshing the upvotes again. Thanks everybody for upvoting. We're getting a lot of great participation here, so thank you. This next one from Emily, it's a long one, so I'm going to read it out. Is there a way to limit the years information is published in Scopus AI without directly prompting, such as you would with a more traditional search with filters? So for example, if you're working on a scientific or medical research area that has disproved a theory, could it either discuss that area in the deep research area and then exclude those publications and anything earlier, or can you manually do it so that you only go with anything published more recently if something landmark came out? So just trying to limit the time span of the research that it's pulling. And this is a Scopus question, so over to you again, Adrian.
Yes, you can with deep research. This is our first generation of actually providing filtering. The way it will work is we're going to support a couple of filters like year, document type, and a few others. And this will be specified directly in the prompt itself. So if you have exclusion or inclusion criteria, you describe it directly. And then the model will take over the job of trying to apply those filters for all the searches it does.
Great. Thank you. That's a great new feature too. Yeah. I think that's something that's been asked for a long time too, right?
It very much has, yes. And we
Yeah.
hope to bring that to the core Scopus AI experience as well for other queries soon as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Good question, Emily. Thank you. All right, this one from Jeremy. How do you account for the fact that these AI agents do not think? How is this emphasized that it is the researcher's responsibility to review everything? I see how this can help research, but how do we know this agent is finding all the information as well? So I guess I know you spoke to this a little bit, Adrian, when you were talking about deep research, but let me start with Judd this time. How are you thinking about this in ScienceDirect, and then we can go over to Adrian as well.
I think it's a great question, and I think that I could probably spend the next 13 minutes giving you all my views, but instead of doing that, I think I will short circuit that a little bit and say that I believe that we as Elsevier and everybody who's working in this space has a responsibility as we go forward to make sure that, as Adrian talked about several times, and I think it's worth going back and even rewatching some of what he said, because there's a lot of good insights in there that sort of indicate the way we think about this stuff more broadly at Elsevier. Our job in building these tools is not to provide users with all the answers they ever needed and make it so that they don't ever have to go into the literature and look for things. Certainly the first version of these tools that we built, like ScienceDirect and Scopus AI, I think that some of us thought at the beginning, like, what users really want is concise answers to their questions so they can get on with their day. And what we found is that what this technology represents broadly, the package of it as well as each individual piece and the products that we're building with it, we are making much better ways to ensure that users and researchers and students and all sorts of users find more of what they need and spend less time combing through things that are irrelevant to them. And we do that primarily by using the large language model to improve retrieval. If anybody reads Aaron Tay's fantastic blog, Musings about Librarianship, he's been on a tear recently and has a few posts from the past few weeks that makes exactly this point. So I think we view our job, as Adrian said, as helping researchers and users explore what's in the literature that can help stimulate their curiosity and make them better at what they do. And it is definitely not our job to be enabling them to skip out on actually exploring the insights that are contained in the answers that they're getting from these tools.
Thank you.
Oh,
all right.
Should I build on that or no? I can.
Oh, yes, please.
I just want to make a caveat. We're definitely not claiming these things think. If I said that at any point, I retracted it. These are not thinking, these are tools. But also to Jeff's point, it is the equivalent of, we're going from a world where I think so there's a few questions in there, but yes, first of all, they're not thinking machines, so they follow patterns that we think are useful, and we try to instill that into the model and how it approaches the problem, so it's repeatable and understandable. And the second, again, is this idea around reviewing everything. You're already kind of doing a lot of work going through every sentence and checking the source and if it matched up or not. And we've been thinking a lot about that as well. So you'll even see in the deep research report, the way it's structured is, again, not written in a way you have to, it's convincing you of an outcome. And then you have to read the source and like, oh, how did it get to outcome here? It's more like, no, these are the components that we think are true. So we can help people make a much easier direct correlation between that and the underlying source. And I think it's still far better than the old world where you get a list of 100 results and you have to throw away maybe 80% of them. And you're still having to do that work, but it's a lot less efficient. You're still working now, but hopefully you're going to get to valuable content much faster. And hopefully
Yeah,
going to try and
exactly.
write these in a way that make it a bit easier for you to also sift through it as well.
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, I think the way I like to think about it is, you know, I used to get thousands and thousands of results that I couldn't possibly read through, right? Now I know that at least they've all been looked at, right? So it's saving me a lot of time. Super, thank you. And I just want to, I mentioned that tech review article that came out about energy use, and thanks to Nicole Hennig for putting it in the Q&A. I just posted it in the chat as well. All right, I think we have time for a couple more. Let's go to Melissa's question, another good one. Is it possible to retrieve the body of related literature that the AI considered but rejected for inclusion in the report bibliography? I'm assuming this is referring to the deep research. So I guess the question is, you know, it looked at a lot of stuff, it included some stuff, but it threw some stuff away. Can we look at the stuff it threw away?
Not in deep research, but you can in the Scopus AI experience. We do have a way you can see everything it retrieved. If people tell us that's useful, then we like to make people happy, so we'll probably just build it. So if that's useful, you want to see all the things it threw away, let us know. And yeah, we'll include in the future.
Right, great
I'd like to
question.
understand what problem that's solving for. That's the thing I'd like to understand a bit better from that question. If anyone wants to come on to explain that in a little bit more detail, I'd be happy. Or send us a message. I'd love to
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah, share your email, Melissa, if you want to do some user testing with Adrian's team, because we're always looking to interview people and understand what their use cases are, what their problems, what problems they're trying to solve, and that's really how we go about building these tools. Super. All right, this is the next one. This is similar to what we had before. This is from Craig. I'm going to read the whole thing, but I think it sort of gets into something a little bit new at the bottom. But by labeling these agentic AI, there seems to be a supposition that the system is capable of making judgment calls. Indeed, one slide referenced finding the quote unquote best results. As these tools cannot actually read or understand the sources they are drawing from, how does the system make these judgment calls? How does it ensure that those judgments do not reinforce already existent biases, ensuring that research from the global South or writers not writing in their first language or studies focused on historically marginalized or minoritized groups? So I think we talked a little bit before about sort of the critical thinking piece, but maybe Adrian, you can dig into a little bit about this idea around bias and not reinforcing you know, some bias or marginalized researchers in the literature.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, re-emphasizing, definitely, it's so there is inherent bias in academic literature, as you all know, and citation-based bias, country-based bias, author-based bias, publication bias. We're sitting on top of a pile of biases, which is a bit challenging. We're trying to build an AI tool because your AI tool, what you want to do is you want to be a reflection of the best academic literature out there. But what best means to people can be quite different. And there's two things happening in ScienceDirect and Scopus AI that we've considered as part of this. And the first is, how are we doing retrieval? How are we getting this content from the large language model itself? What search mechanisms we're using? And the second is how it's processing that information. So I think these two, if looking at these 2 points, we can address this question. So the first is, the most important part is you want to get the best possible information from the LLM because it's only as good as the information you provide it. And typically when search tools do this, they look at ranking factors like number of citations something's received, where it was published, H-index of its authors, and recency, and a whole bunch of other things. And each of those introduce a risk of bias. And quite counterintuitively with this approach, I come from a search background myself. So this is kind of going against my instincts because we normally rank in that way, but we actually went much simpler. We said, well, we already have really high trust in this content. And even with Scopus content that goes through the external content advisory board, we have extremely high trust. This is high quality. So all we really need to care about is the relevancy of the content. And that's how we've actually primarily built this solution. It's built primarily on the relevancy of the abstract, or in ScienceDirect's case, based primarily on the relevancy of the chunk of the full text that we're doing retrieval on. So the idea is that we're putting what we think are the most relevant pieces of information in front of the large language model to be able to do something with it. It sounds simple, but what happens when you do this is that it doesn't take into consideration a lot of other factors. So you may have noticed, for example, in my demo, you look at it, well, you'll see some papers that have maybe 200 citations of space, and maybe only have 1, 5, or even 0. And we've done some analysis on this, and by taking this approach, we actually get a really nice distributed group of papers from a variety of different sources that maybe have been easily overlooked before, especially if you were taking those other factors into consideration. So it starts with the relevancy and the retrieval, getting that and trying to reduce the biases as much as possible. You can't reduce it entirely because there's always going to be bias in what journals people get into and that kind of thing. But we can do our best to try and minimize it and focus on making the best quality answers, regardless of where they come from. And we can do that because the content is so highly trusted. And the second part is the LLM part, and how we prompt the model to think about these things. So the earlier question was like, well, you're leaving some papers on the floor here. You're not even including them in the response. I'd love to see them. And sometimes we leave them on the floor because they just won't make a great answer. Our goal is to help try and provide as direct a response as we can and provide some of the evidence around how we arrived at that. And what the LM is prompted to do specifically is trying to base its answer on claims and assumptions directly from the papers. If it's trying to infer too much or something doesn't look right, it may leave it aside because it just causes confusion or causes more work for the researcher. And these two things we pull together, and then we run an evaluation framework where we have thousands of these questions which we run, and we also work with SMEs, and we're trying to make sure we're producing the most relevant and best responses we can. But for addressing the biases, these are the 2 ways we're doing it. It starts with making sure we have the content sources that are based on the relevancy of the content itself and not other factors. And the second, a prompt that tries to ensure it's extracting information that directly answers the question. Or if it's inferred, it's clearly stated that's inferred and why it's inferred. You won't remove everything in biases entirely, but we think this takes a really big step towards that. And yeah, there's also other things we're thinking about in the future to improve this further, but that's what we've done so far.
Great, thanks for the detailed answer. Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I'm glad it came up. It's AI isn't going to solve the underlying bias in the scientific record. I think that's something we all need to work on. Great. So I realize we are just about at time, and I know I need to hand it back to Sabrina to wrap up. I want to thank everyone. We didn't get through all of your questions, but we got through a bunch of them, and there's just so much great information in the Q&A. People have been adding URLs, and I've been trying to put them in the chat as well. So hopefully you're getting some of those resources that are being discussed. And thanks for a fantastic conversation today. It's just your questions were great, and really enjoyed being here with Adrian and Judd. And on the screen here, you've got a QR code where you can contact us directly if you have additional questions, or if we didn't get to your question, or anything more that you want to know. So with that, I will hand it back over to you, Sabrina, to close us out. Thank you so much, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, I'll just echo Emily and say thanks so much to Emily, Judd, and Adrian for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording, handouts from Elsevier, and where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thank you
a
for
lot.
having us.
Everybody, thank you.